When two fake HOA enforcers tried to strong-arm a quiet black woman off her porch, they had no idea she was a CIA operative and that their intimidation tactics would land them in handcuffs within minutes. In a quiet suburban neighborhood in the heart of Washington, D.C., tensions were running high. The Homeowners Association, HOA, had recently tightened its rules on neighborhood aesthetics, cracking down on everything from overgrown lawns to mismatched house colors. For most residents, this was just another layer of bureaucracy they begrudgingly accepted. But for one homeowner, it would become an explosive confrontation that no one saw coming. On a crisp autumn afternoon, Sarah Thompson, an unassuming yet fiercely intelligent woman in her early 40s, sat peacefully on her porch, sipping a cup of tea and enjoying the golden hues of falling leaves. Her modest home blended seamlessly with the others around it, but apparently, not well enough for the self-appointed enforcers of the HOA. What these men didn't know, however, was that Sarah wasn't your average suburbanite. She was a decorated CIA operative who had spent years navigating some of the world's most dangerous regions. Unbeknownst to them, she had already anticipated trouble. And when trouble came knocking, backup was already in place. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across Sarah Thompson's quiet suburban street, its golden rays filtering through the trees and dappling the pavement with patches of light. It was the kind of serene moment that made suburban life seem idyllic, a scene straight out of a postcard. But Sarah, seated on her porch with a steaming cup of tea in hand, wasn't fooled by appearances. Her years as a CIA operative had taught her to trust her instincts, and something about today felt off. She couldn't quite put her finger on it, but there was an undercurrent of unease lingering in the air, like the faint hum of electricity before a storm. Her suspicions were confirmed when two men approached her property, their footsteps crunching audibly against the gravel path leading up to her front yard. They wore uniforms emblazoned with what appeared to be the logo of the Homeowners Association, HOA, complete with badges pinned neatly to their chests. At first glance, they looked official enough, clean-cut, professional, even slightly imposing. Yet, as they drew closer, subtle details began to betray their true nature. Their uniforms were slightly too baggy, the fabric cheap and ill-fitting, as though purchased hastily from a discount retailer. The badges glinted unnaturally bright under the fading sunlight, almost as if they'd been polished excessively to mask imperfections. And then there was the way they carried themselves, not with the confident stride of legitimate authority figures, but with stiff, awkward movements that suggested discomfort or nerves. Sarah watched them silently, her expression calm and unreadable. To anyone else, she might have seemed like just another resident caught off guard by an unexpected visit. But beneath her composed exterior, her mind was already racing. Years of fieldwork had trained her to analyze every detail, no matter how small. The fact that these men hadn't announced their arrival beforehand raised red flags. Legitimate HOA representatives typically sent notices well in advance of any inspection. Moreover, their timing, showing up unannounced at dusk, was suspiciously convenient for someone looking to catch her off guard. "Ma'am," the taller of the two men began, his voice clipped and overly formal. He stopped a few feet away from the porch steps, his partner hovering slightly behind him. "We're here on behalf of the Homeowners Association to discuss a compliance issue regarding your property." Sarah didn't respond immediately. Instead, she took a slow sip of her tea, letting the silence stretch just long enough to make them uncomfortable. When she finally spoke, her tone was polite but firm. "I see. May I ask what specific issue you're referring to?" The man hesitated, clearly thrown off balance by her composure. He exchanged a quick glance with his partner before continuing. "It has come to our attention that the paint color of your front door does not meet the HOA's approved guidelines. We've received complaints from other residents, and we're required to address the matter promptly." Sarah arched an eyebrow, her curiosity piqued. "I wasn't aware there was a problem," she said evenly, setting her teacup down on the small wooden table beside her. "If this is indeed a concern, I'd be happy to review the relevant documentation. Could you please provide me with a written notice outlining the violation?" Her request was perfectly reasonable, yet it seemed to fluster the shorter man, who shifted uncomfortably on his feet. He glanced at his partner again, his unease palpable. For a brief moment, neither of them spoke, and Sarah used the opportunity to study them more closely. Their body language told her everything she needed to know. These weren't professionals accustomed to dealing with difficult situations. They were amateurs playing dress-up, trying to project an air of authority they didn't actually possess. The taller man cleared his throat, attempting to regain control of the conversation. "Mom, we don't have time for formalities. This is a straightforward issue, and we expect immediate cooperation. You need to fix the problem, or face the consequences." Sarah tilted her head slightly, her sharp eyes narrowing ever so subtly. "Or face what consequences, exactly?" she asked, her voice still calm but laced with steel. "Are you threatening me?" The shorter man stepped forward, his bravado apparently bolstered by his partner's earlier display of aggression. "Look, lady, we're just doing our job. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. You either comply, or we'll have to take further action." At that moment, Sarah knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that these men weren't who they claimed to be. Legitimate HOA representatives wouldn't dare escalate a minor aesthetic dispute into a confrontation involving threats. No, these imposters had ulterior motives, and Sarah intended to find out what they were. But she also knew better than to tip her hand prematurely. Instead, she allowed a hint of irritation to creep into her voice, feigning frustration rather than alarm. "If you think I'm going to let you bully me into making changes without proper documentation, you're sorely mistaken," she said firmly. "I pay my dues, I follow the rules, and I won't tolerate being harassed over something as trivial as paint color." Her words seemed to unsettle the duo further, their confidence wavering visibly. The taller man opened his mouth to retort, but before he could speak, Sarah leaned back in her chair and pressed a button on a small device hidden in her pocket. It was a discreet move, almost imperceptible, but it triggered a series of events that would leave the fake HOA cops reeling. Within seconds, the sound of screeching tires shattered the tranquility of the neighborhood. 3 black SUVs roared into view, skidding to a halt in front of Sarah's house. Doors flew open, and armed agents clad in tactical gear poured out, surrounding the imposters in a matter of moments. The transformation was instantaneous. The once intimidating duo now stood frozen, their faces pale with shock and fear. One of the agents approached Sarah, his demeanor respectful and deferential. "Director Thompson," he said, addressing her formally. "Are these the individuals?" Sarah rose gracefully from her chair, her movements deliberate and unhurried. She nodded, her gaze never leaving the imposters. "Yes, take them into custody." As the agents moved in to apprehend the fake HOA cops, Sarah turned her attention back to her teacup, picking it up as though nothing extraordinary had just occurred. To the casual observer, she might have seemed unfazed by the dramatic turn of events. But inside, her mind was already working overtime, piecing together clues and formulating questions. Who had sent these men? What had they hoped to achieve? And most importantly, how could she ensure that such an incident never happened again? Not just to her, but to anyone else in her community? For now, however, she allowed herself a small measure of satisfaction. These imposters had underestimated her, assuming that a quiet black woman sipping tea on her porch would be an easy target. Little did they know, they had walked right into the lion's den and paid the price for their arrogance. The confrontation escalated rapidly, though to an outside observer, it may have appeared deceptively calm. Sarah Thompson's demeanor remained composed, almost unnervingly so, as the fake HOA cops grew increasingly agitated. Their initial attempt at intimidation had failed spectacularly, leaving them floundering in a situation they clearly hadn't anticipated. But rather than backing down, their frustration boiled over into outright aggression, an error that would seal their fate. The taller man, who had been trying, and failing, to assert dominance throughout the exchange, finally snapped. Ignoring Sarah's pointed question about what consequences he intended to impose, he stepped closer, crossing into her personal space. His movement was deliberate, meant to intimidate, but instead, it only confirmed Sarah's suspicions. These men were not here for a minor compliance issue. They were testing boundaries, probing for weaknesses, perhaps hoping to provoke a reaction that could justify further escalation. "You're coming with us," he growled, reaching out to grab her arm. The act itself was clumsy and amateurish, betraying his lack of training or experience in handling volatile situations. For most people, Such a brazen move might have sparked panic or fear, but Sarah wasn't like most people. Her reflexes, honed through years of covert operations and high-stakes missions, kicked in instantly. With fluid precision, she twisted free of his grip, using his own momentum against him. A swift strike to his wrist sent a jolt of pain shooting up his arm, causing him to yelp and stumble backward. Before the shorter man could react, Sarah calmly pulled a small device from her pocket, a tactical pager disguised as a key fob, and pressed a button. It was a simple motion, almost imperceptible, but its effects were immediate and dramatic. Within seconds, the quiet suburban street erupted into chaos. 3 black SUVs screeched to a halt in front of Sarah's house, their tires squealing against the asphalt. Armed agents clad in tactical gear spilled out, moving with practiced efficiency. Each agent carried themselves with the same disciplined poise that Sarah exuded, their movements synchronized and purposeful. Within moments, the imposters were surrounded, their options dwindling to zero. For the fake HOA cops, the sudden appearance of heavily armed operatives must have felt like stepping into a nightmare. One moment, they were attempting to bully a seemingly ordinary homeowner. The next, they found themselves facing a highly coordinated response team straight out of a spy thriller. Their faces paled visibly as realization dawned. They had severely underestimated their target. One of the agents approached Sarah, addressing her with clear respect. "Director Thompson," he said, his voice steady and professional. "Are these the individuals?" Sarah nodded, her expression unreadable. "Yes, take them into custody." Her tone left no room for argument. She didn't raise her voice, nor did she display any outward signs of anger or triumph. Instead, she maintained the same calm, collected demeanor she had exhibited throughout the entire encounter. To anyone watching, it might have seemed almost surreal, the juxtaposition of a woman sipping tea on her porch while orchestrating the takedown of 2 would-be aggressors. As the agents moved in to apprehend the imposters, cuffing their hands behind their backs and reading them their rights, Sarah took a step back, allowing herself a moment to process what had just transpired. While the outcome was exactly what she had expected, the speed and intensity of the escalation still carried weight. These men had come prepared to exploit fear and division, banking on the assumption that a black woman living in a predominantly white neighborhood would be too intimidated or too powerless to resist. What they hadn't counted on was Sarah's unique skill set, her network of resources, and her unwavering confidence. Neighbors began to emerge from their homes, drawn by the commotion. Some stood frozen in shock, staring wide-eyed at the scene unfolding before them. Others whispered among themselves, speculating wildly about what had happened. A few even ventured closer, curiosity overcoming caution, though none dared approach Sarah directly. The sight of armed agents and handcuffed suspects was enough to keep everyone at a respectful distance. Despite the chaos, Sarah remained unfazed. She turned her attention back to her teacup, taking another sip as if nothing extraordinary had occurred. In many ways, this was true for her. Such scenarios, while rare in suburbia, were not entirely foreign to someone with her background. Still, she understood the significance of the moment. This wasn't just about protecting herself, it was about sending a message. These imposters had sought to prey on fear and division, exploiting societal vulnerabilities for their own gain. By exposing them so decisively, Sarah had turned the tables, turning their attempted power play into a public spectacle. While the agents led the imposters away, Sarah allowed herself a brief moment of reflection. She knew that the fallout from this incident would ripple far beyond her immediate neighborhood. Word would spread quickly, both locally and within certain circles of influence. People would talk, speculate, and analyze. Some might dismiss the event as an isolated incident, while others would recognize it as a stark reminder of the dangers posed by opportunists and imposters. For Sarah, however, the confrontation represented something deeper. It underscored the importance of vigilance, not just in matters of national security, but in everyday life. These men had exploited a common trope, dressing up as authority figures to instill fear and compliance. Had Sarah been less prepared, or less confident, they might have succeeded. But because she had anticipated trouble and taken preemptive measures, she had been able to neutralize the threat before it could escalate further. Her backup team, stationed nearby as a precautionary measure, had arrived precisely when needed. Every detail of the operation had been meticulously planned. From the positioning of the vehicles to the timing of the response, nothing had been left to chance, ensuring that the imposters were detained swiftly and without collateral damage. It was a textbook example of strategic thinking and execution, qualities that defined Sarah's career in the CIA. As the dust settled and the SUVs disappeared down the street, Sarah returned to her chair, resuming her seat on the porch as though nothing unusual had happened. Yet, beneath her calm exterior, her mind was already working overtime. Who were these men? Who had sent them? And why had they targeted her specifically? These questions would require answers, but for now, she focused on the broader implications of the incident. In confronting the imposters, Sarah had demonstrated not only her personal strength, but also the value of preparation and resilience. She had refused to be cowed by threats or intimidation, choosing instead to stand her ground and fight back. More importantly, she had shown her neighbors, and the world, that assumptions based on appearances can be dangerously misleading. Beneath her unassuming exterior lay a wealth of knowledge, experience, and capability. And when pushed, she was more than capable of defending herself and her community. The confrontation marked a turning point, not just for Sarah, but for the neighborhood as a whole. In the days to come, residents would reflect on what they had witnessed, drawing lessons about trust, unity, and the importance of standing together in the face of adversity. For Sarah, the incident served as a reminder of why she had chosen this line of work in the first place: to protect, to serve, and to ensure that those who sought to exploit others would always find themselves outmatched. The aftermath of the confrontation with the fake HOA cops rippled through the neighborhood like a storm surge, leaving behind both shock and a newfound sense of clarity. For Sarah Thompson, the events of that day were not just about exposing imposters or defending herself. It was an opportunity to address deeper issues within her community. What followed was a revelation, not only about who she truly was but also about the power of transparency, trust, and collective action in combating threats both external and internal. Later that evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and twilight settled over the suburban streets, residents gathered in the local park for an impromptu meeting. The air buzzed with whispered conversations, speculation, and unease. Neighbors exchanged theories about what had happened earlier, their curiosity mingling with apprehension. Some wondered aloud if they should be worried about their own safety. Others marveled at the surreal nature of the event, questioning how something so dramatic could unfold in their otherwise quiet corner of the world. Sarah stood at the center of it all, calm and composed as always. Dressed casually in jeans and a sweater, she blended seamlessly into the crowd, yet there was no mistaking the authority she carried. When she stepped forward to speak, the murmurs died down almost immediately, replaced by rapt attention. Her presence commanded respect, even before she uttered a single word. "I understand how unsettling today's events must have been," she began, her voice steady and measured. She paused briefly, scanning the faces around her, ensuring everyone felt seen and acknowledged. "What you witnessed wasn't just an isolated incident. It was a reminder of how easily fear and division can be exploited by those seeking to harm us." Her words struck a chord, drawing nods of agreement from several attendees. But Sarah wasn't finished yet. With deliberate care, she revealed a truth that would change the way her neighbors viewed her, and themselves, forever. "Before I continue, I want to share something personal. My name is Sarah Thompson, and while I live here among you as a neighbor, I also serve my country in another capacity, as a director within the Central Intelligence Agency." A murmur rippled through the crowd, quickly followed by stunned silence. To many, Sarah had always seemed kind and approachable, perhaps even unassuming. The idea that she led a double life, one filled with high-stakes missions and global intrigue, was almost too much to process. Yet, as they absorbed her words, pieces of the puzzle began falling into place. Her poise under pressure, her ability to anticipate trouble, the seamless coordination of the agents who arrived on her porch, all of it made perfect sense now. "I didn't reveal this part of myself lightly," she continued, her tone softening slightly. "But I believe that honesty and transparency are crucial tools in building stronger communities. Today's incident showed us that we cannot afford to take our safety, or each other, for granted. Those men weren't legitimate HOA representatives. They were opportunists preying on fear and division, and they chose me because they thought I'd be an easy target. She let that sink in, watching as the weight of her statement registered on the faces around her. Then, with quiet determination, she added, "They underestimated me. And more importantly, they underestimated us." By sharing her identity and experiences, Sarah took a significant risk. In doing so, she invited scrutiny and potential judgment, but she also opened the door to connection. Her decision to step into the spotlight was strategic, aimed at fostering the culture of openness and mutual support. She knew that secrets, whether personal or communal, often breed mistrust. By laying bare her own truth, she hoped to inspire others to do the same. "I've spent my career navigating some of the most dangerous corners of the world," she explained. "And one thing I've learned is that resilience isn't built alone. It's forged together. We're strongest when we stand united, when we refuse to let outsiders dictate our narrative or sow discord among us." Her message resonated deeply, particularly in light of recent tensions within the neighborhood. Over the past year, disagreements over HOA rules, property aesthetics, and perceived slights had created rifts between residents. What started as minor grievances had escalated into simmering resentments, dividing neighbors and eroding the sense of camaraderie that once defined the community. The arrival of the fake HOA cops had been a stark reminder of how fragile that unity could be and how easily it could be exploited. Sarah urged her audience to reflect on these dynamics, encouraging them to prioritize communication and empathy over conflict. "We can't control everything that happens outside our doors," she said, "but we can choose how we respond to it. We can choose to come together instead of tearing each other apart. That's how we protect ourselves, not just from imposters like those men, but from the forces that seek to divide us." In the days following the meeting, the neighborhood underwent a subtle yet profound transformation. Conversations that had once been tense and accusatory became opportunities for dialogue and understanding. Residents who had avoided one another now greeted each other warmly, exchanging smiles and small talk. Committees formed to address lingering disputes, focusing on compromise rather than confrontation. Even the HOA, embarrassed by the impersonation scandal, issued a public apology and vowed to implement stricter vetting processes for its representatives. For Sarah, this shift was exactly what she had hoped to achieve. While she continued to live her life quietly, balancing her roles as a neighbor and a covered operative, she embraced her newfound role as a quiet leader in the community. People sought her advice, not because of her title or background, but because of the wisdom and perspective she brought to every interaction. She became a bridge between worlds, helping her neighbors navigate challenges both mundane and extraordinary. At the same time, the incident served as a catalyst for broader discussions about security and accountability. Neighborhood watch programs expanded, incorporating training sessions on recognizing suspicious behavior and reporting it effectively. Residents installed additional cameras and lighting, creating a safer environment for everyone. Most importantly, they cultivated a spirit of vigilance without paranoia, ensuring that precautions were taken without sacrificing the warmth and inclusivity that made the community special. As weeks turned into months, the memory of the fake HOA cops faded from the forefront of people's minds, but its lessons endured. The confrontation had exposed vulnerabilities, yes, but it had also highlighted strengths. It reminded everyone that assumptions based on appearances can be dangerously misleading, and that true strength lies not in individual prowess, but in collective resilience. For Sarah, the resolution was deeply satisfying, not because she had proven herself capable of handling a crisis, but because she had helped her community grow stronger in the process. By revealing her identity and sharing her insights, she had inspired others to look beyond surface-level differences and focus on what truly mattered: trust, unity, and shared purpose. In the end, the story of the fake HOA cops became more than just a cautionary tale. It became a testament to the power of courage, transparency, and solidarity. And though Sarah returned to her quiet life on the porch, sipping tea and observing the world around her, she did so knowing that she had left an indelible mark on those she called neighbors. The incident with the fake HOA cops was a watershed moment for Sarah Thompson's suburban neighborhood, sparking profound changes that rippled far beyond the initial confrontation. It wasn't just about exposing imposters or showcasing Sarah's extraordinary capabilities. It was about how the community responded in the aftermath. The event became a catalyst for growth, reflection, and transformation, as residents grappled with the vulnerabilities it exposed and worked collectively to build a stronger, more united future. For Sarah, the days following the confrontation were a time of quiet introspection. Though she had handled the situation with precision and grace, she couldn't help but reflect on what it revealed about herself and her role within the community. On one hand, the incident reaffirmed her belief in preparation and vigilance, qualities ingrained in her through years of service in the CIA. She had anticipated trouble, taken preemptive measures, and executed a plan flawlessly when the moment arrived. But on the other hand, it also reminded her of the importance of humility and connection. Sarah understood that being a leader didn't mean standing apart from others. It meant meeting people where they were, listening to their concerns, and empowering them to take ownership of their shared space. By revealing her identity and sharing her experiences, she had opened a door, not just for herself, but for everyone around her. Her neighbors saw her not as some untouchable figure, but as someone who cared deeply about their well-being and wanted to see them thrive. In the weeks that followed, Sarah continued to play a subtle yet influential role in shaping the neighborhood's evolution. She attended community meetings, offered practical advice on security measures, and encouraged open dialogue about lingering tensions. She never sought recognition or praise, preferring instead to work behind the scenes, nudging conversations in productive directions. Her presence alone served as a reminder that even the most ordinary-looking individuals can harbor extraordinary strength, and that assumptions based on appearances are often misleading. The neighborhood underwent a remarkable transformation in the wake of the incident. Residents, once divided by petty grievances and misunderstandings, began to come together in ways they hadn't before. The revelation of Sarah's true identity and the lessons she imparted during the impromptu meeting inspired many to reevaluate their priorities and focus on what truly mattered: fostering trust and building relationships. One of the most visible changes was the revitalization of community engagement. Committees formed to address long-standing issues such as HOA disputes, property maintenance standards, and neighborhood safety. These discussions were no longer dominated by accusations or defensiveness. Instead, they centered on collaboration and compromise. Neighbors who had previously avoided each other now found common ground, exchanging ideas and working toward solutions that benefited everyone. The HOA itself underwent significant reforms, spurred by both embarrassment over the impersonation scandal and a genuine desire to rebuild trust. New protocols were implemented to verify the identities of representatives and ensure transparency in decision-making processes. Regular town hall meetings gave residents a platform to voice their concerns and hold leadership accountable. Slowly but surely, the organization shed its reputation as an overbearing enforcer and began to function as a facilitator of positive change. Security measures also improved dramatically. Spurred by Sarah's example, residents banded together to enhance neighborhood safety. Surveillance cameras were installed at key intersections, motion-activated lights illuminated dark corners, and a robust neighborhood watch program was established. Training sessions taught participants how to recognize suspicious behavior, report incidents effectively, and de-escalate conflicts peacefully. While these precautions added an extra layer of protection, they did so without fostering paranoia or alienating anyone. A delicate balance Sarah emphasized throughout the process. Perhaps most importantly, the incident fostered a renewed sense of solidarity among neighbors. People began looking out for one another, checking in on elderly residents, helping new families settle in, and organizing social events to strengthen bonds. Block parties, potlucks, and holiday gatherings brought people together, creating opportunities for laughter, storytelling, and connection. The atmosphere shifted from one of guardedness to warmth, proving that even small acts of kindness could have a profound impact. As the months passed, the story of the fake HOA cops took on a life of its own. It became a cautionary tale told across the nation, reminding listeners everywhere of the dangers posed by opportunists seeking to exploit fear and division. For Sarah's neighbors, however, it was much more personal. It was a lesson in resilience, adaptability, and the power of unity in the face of adversity. The incident underscored several key truths. One, assumptions can be dangerous. The fake HOA cops had relied on stereotypes and preconceived notions to target Sarah, assuming she would be an easy mark. Instead, they encountered someone who defied every expectation. This served as a powerful reminder that appearances can be deceiving, and that underestimating others is a recipe for failure. 2. Preparation is key. Sarah's ability to neutralize the threat stemmed from her meticulous planning and foresight. She had anticipated trouble and put safeguards in place long before the imposters arrived. This reinforced the importance of staying vigilant and prepared, whether in matters of personal safety or community well-being. 3. Transparency builds trust. By revealing her identity and sharing her experiences, Sarah demonstrated that honesty and openness are essential tools for fostering trust. Her willingness to step into the spotlight inspired others to do the same, creating a culture of accountability and mutual support. 4. Strength lies in unity. The confrontation showed that individual strength, while valuable, is no match for collective action. When neighbors came together to address challenges and implement solutions, they created a foundation of resilience that benefited everyone. As the neighborhood moved forward, it carried the lessons of the past with it. Residents remained vigilant, knowing that threats, whether external or internal, could arise at any time. But they also embraced a spirit of optimism, confident in their ability to face whatever challenges lay ahead. For Sarah, life returned to its usual rhythm, or as close to usual as it could get for someone living a double life. She continued to serve her country in secrecy, carrying out missions that required courage, intelligence, and unwavering dedication. At the same time, she cherished her role as a quiet leader in her community, inspiring those around her to remain vigilant, compassionate, and united. The porch where the confrontation had unfolded remained a symbol of resilience and empowerment. On quiet evenings, Sarah would sit there with a cup of tea, watching the world go by. She knew that the neighborhood was stronger now than it had ever been, and that, in itself, was worth celebrating. In the end, the story of the fake HOA cops wasn't just about exposing imposters or showcasing heroism. It was about how a community came together to heal, grow, and emerge stronger than before. And as long as people remembered the lessons learned, they would continue to thrive, not just as individuals, but as a united front against whatever challenges the future might bring.